The heir's inheritance. The old house leered down at me from its perch on the hill, a gothic silhouette against the bloodshot sunset. Ravens circled the widow's walk like morbid punctuation marks, their harsh cries an ominous welcome. I, Randall Everett, stood at the threshold of Blackwood Manor, the grand, decaying estate, bequeathed to me by a distant, long-deceased relative. An author of the macabre, even I felt a tremor of unease. The lawyer's words echoed in my ears. "The house has been unoccupied for decades, Mr. Everett. A caretaker visits weekly, but otherwise, it's as your relative left it." His forced smile and nervous shifting told me there was more. He handed over the keys, his hand clammy, and fled as if the house itself might reach out and claim him. The heavy oak door groaned open, releasing a gust of stale, dusty air that smelled of decay and forgotten memories. Shadows danced in the dim light filtering through cobwebbed windows, creating an unsettling illusion of movement. A shiver ran down my spine, not entirely from the cold. Inside, the manor was a mausoleum of faded grandeur. Tattered portraits stared down from the walls, their subjects seeming to follow me with accusing eyes. Ornate furniture gathered dust, and the once polished marble floors were cracked and discolored. The air hung heavy with silence, punctuated only by the occasional creak or groan of the settling house. As darkness fell, I lit a fire in the vast, drafty library. The flames cast flickering shadows that danced across the leather-bound books lining the shelves. I pulled a volume at random, its spine cracking with age. A handwritten note fluttered to the floor. The note was penned in a spidery script, the ink faded and brown. It read, "To the heir who dares claim Blackwood Manor, beware the sins of the past. They linger within these walls, waiting to consume the unwary. Only a heart pure of intent can break the curse that binds this house. Turn back now or be forever lost." A chill wind rattled the windows, extinguishing the candles and plunging the room into darkness. The fire crackled ominously, casting monstrous shadows that seemed to writhe and twist. A sense of dread coiled in the pit of my stomach. I was not alone in Blackwood Manor. The darkness pressed in around me, a palpable presence that seemed to breathe. A sound, like the rustling of silk against dry leaves, echoed from the far corner of the room. My heart hammered in my chest, a frantic drumbeat in the suffocating silence. Summoning a flicker of courage, I struck a match, its flame a tiny beacon against the encroaching gloom. The fire in the hearth had died, leaving only embers glowing like baleful eyes. I held the match aloft, my hand trembling. The rustling sound grew louder, accompanied by a soft, wet clicking. It was coming from behind the heavy velvet drapes that shrouded the tall windows. I edged closer, the match casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. With a gasp, I ripped the drapes open. Moonlight flooded the room, illuminating a sight that sent a wave of revulsion through me. A grotesque figure crouched on the window seat, its back to me. It was hunched and skeletal, its skin stretched taut over jutting bones. Long, matted hair cascaded down its back, obscuring its face. The figure turned slowly, its movements jerky and unnatural. Its face was a mask of horror. Sunken eyes glowed with an eerie luminescence, and a lipless mouth gaped open, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. A guttural growl rumbled from its throat. I stumbled backward, the match falling from my hand and extinguishing in a shower of sparks. Darkness engulfed me once more, but the image of the creature was seared into my mind. I fumbled for the doorway, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My fingers found the doorknob, but it wouldn't turn. The door was locked, the keyhole gaping like an empty eye socket. Panic clawed at my throat. I was trapped. The clicking sound grew louder, closer. I pressed my back against the door, my eyes straining to pierce the darkness. A cold, fetid breath washed over me, raising goosebumps on my skin. The creature was behind me. I could feel its presence, a suffocating aura of malice and decay. It hissed, its hot breath tickling my ear. Then, with a sickening crack, the door splintered. I was thrown backward as the creature lunged, its claws outstretched. I cried out, my voice swallowed by the darkness. The creature's weight slammed into me, knocking the air from my lungs. I hit the floor hard, the back of my head striking the unforgiving marble. Pain exploded in my skull, and a kaleidoscope of colors danced before my eyes. I struggled to breathe, my vision swimming. The creature straddled my chest, its putrid stench filling my nostrils. Its claws dug into my shoulders, pinning me to the ground. I could feel its hot, ragged breath on my face. Its eyes, those glowing orbs of malevolence, bore into mine. A silent scream tore through me, but no sound escaped my lips. I was paralyzed, frozen in a tableau of terror. The creature's lipless mouth stretched into a grotesque grin, revealing its needle-like teeth. It leaned closer, its rancid breath washing over my face. I closed my eyes, bracing myself for the inevitable, but the killing blow never came. Instead, a blinding light filled the room, banishing the darkness. I squeezed my eyes shut against the sudden brightness, my head throbbing. When I dared to open them again, the creature was gone. I lay on the floor, panting, my body trembling uncontrollably. The room was bathed in a soft, ethereal glow that emanated from the fireplace. The embers, once dull and lifeless, now pulsed with an otherworldly light. I pushed myself up, my muscles protesting. The door, once splintered, was now intact, its surface smooth and unblemished. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Cautiously, I approached the fireplace. The light grew brighter as I drew near, casting intricate patterns on the walls. I reached out a tentative hand, the warmth washing over me like a benediction. As I touched the light, a voice echoed through the room. It was deep and resonant, imbued with an ancient power. "The heir has arrived," it said. "The trial has begun." The light intensified, enveloping me in its embrace. I cried out, but my voice was lost in the swirling radiance. The room dissolved around me, and I was falling, tumbling through a vortex of light and shadow. Then everything went black. I awoke with a gasp, my body sprawled on cold, damp earth. The air was thick with the scent of decay and dampness. I pushed myself up, my head pounding. I was in a graveyard, surrounded by moss-covered tombstones and twisted trees that clawed at the sky. A thick fog clung to the ground, obscuring everything beyond a few feet. A sense of unease settled over me, a premonition of something terrible lurking just beyond my sight. I stumbled through the fog, my hands outstretched, searching for anything familiar. The tombstones loomed like silent sentinels, their inscriptions illegible in the dim light. The air grew colder, the fog thicker. A sound, like the dragging of heavy chains, echoed through the mist. I froze, my heart hammering in my chest. The sound grew louder, closer. A figure emerged from the fog, its movements slow and deliberate. It was tall and gaunt, its body shrouded in a tattered black cloak. Its face was hidden in shadow, but I could see the glint of its eyes burning with an unholy light. The figure stopped a few feet away, its presence radiating an aura of menace. I took a step back, my hand instinctively reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. "Welcome, heir of Blackwood," the figure rasped, its voice a chilling whisper. "Your trial has begun." I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. Fear had paralyzed my tongue. The figure raised a skeletal hand, pointing towards a crumbling mausoleum that stood at the far end of the graveyard. "There lies the truth of your inheritance," it said. "Face your fears and claim what is rightfully yours, or turn back now and be forever lost." The figure vanished back into the fog, leaving me alone in the oppressive silence. I stared at the mausoleum, its dark entrance beckoning like an open grave. A shiver ran down my spine, not entirely from the cold. I knew I had to go on. The secrets of Blackwood Manor and my own destiny lay within that tomb. But what awaited me there? What horrors would I have to face? With a deep breath, I stepped forward into the swirling mist. The graveyard seemed to hold its breath, the tombstones watching my every move. The chains rattled again, a mournful dirge in the stillness. I was walking towards my fate, and I couldn't turn back. The fog clung to me like a shroud as I approached the mausoleum, its oppressive weight pressing down on my shoulders. The heavy iron door stood slightly ajar, its hinges groaning in protest as I pushed it open. The interior was pitch black, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay. I fumbled in my pocket for a lighter, the flames sputtering to life and casting a feeble glow into the gloom. The mausoleum was a chamber of horrors. Cobwebs draped the walls like macabre tapestries, and the floor was littered with the detritus of forgotten funerals. Wilted flowers, rusted candlesticks, and fragments of bone. A row of stone sarcophagi lined the far wall, their lids carved with grotesque faces frozen in expressions of agony. I moved deeper into the tomb, the air growing colder with each step. The silence was absolute, broken only by the soft drip of water from somewhere in the darkness. I felt a prickling sensation on the back of my neck, as if I were being watched. I stopped in front of the central sarcophagus, its lid adorned with the Blackwood family crest. A raven perched on a skull. The inscription read, "Here lies the heart of Blackwood. Beware the darkness within." My hand trembled as I reached for the lid. It was surprisingly heavy, and it took all my strength to push it aside. The interior of the sarcophagus was lined with faded velvet. Nestled within was a small, ornate box, its surface etched with intricate designs. I lifted it out, my fingers brushing against the cool metal. The box clicked open, revealing its contents. I gasped, my stomach churning. Inside lay a human heart, perfectly preserved, its surface glistening with an unnatural sheen. It pulsed rhythmically, as if still alive. A wave of nausea washed over me. I dropped the box, the heart rolling onto the floor with a sickening thud. The mausoleum seemed to shudder, and the air crackled with an unseen energy. The stone faces on the sarcophagi twisted into monstrous grimaces, their eyes glowing with a malevolent light. The air grew thick, and the temperature plummeted. I felt a presence behind me, a cold, suffocating aura that seemed to drain the life from my body. I turned slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. Standing there in the shadows was the grotesque creature from the library. Its eyes burned with hatred, its lipless mouth stretched into a silent scream. It lunged, its claws outstretched. I cried out, raising my arms in a futile attempt to shield myself, but the creature never reached me. A blinding light erupted from the heart on the floor, engulfing the creature in its radiance. It shrieked, a sound that pierced the silence like a shard of glass. The light intensified, its brilliance searing my eyes. I shielded my face, my body shaking uncontrollably. The creature's screams grew louder, more desperate. It thrashed and writhed, its form contorting in agony. Then, with a final heart-wrenching cry, it dissolved into a cloud of ash that swirled and danced in the air. The light faded, leaving the mausoleum in darkness once more. I lowered my arms, my vision blurred by tears. My heart pounded in my chest, a frantic rhythm that echoed the silence of the tomb. I had witnessed something truly horrifying, something beyond the realm of human comprehension. I knelt beside the heart, its glow now extinguished. It lay still, its surface dull and lifeless. The mausoleum seemed to exhale, the air growing lighter, less oppressive. A sense of peace settled over me, a calm amidst the storm of emotions. The secrets of Blackwood Manor were beginning to unravel, and I knew I was on the right path. I picked up the heart, its weight surprisingly light in my hand. It felt cold and smooth like polished stone. I placed it back in the box, its lid snapping shut with a final click. I turned to leave, but a voice stopped me in my tracks. "Not yet, Heir of Blackwood," it said. The voice was familiar, the same deep, resonant tone that had spoken to me in the library. I spun around, my eyes scanning the shadows. There, standing beside the open sarcophagus, was the cloaked figure from the graveyard. Its face was still hidden, but its presence radiated an aura of power. "You have faced your first trial," it said, "but the path to your inheritance is long and treacherous. Are you prepared to continue?" I hesitated, my mind reeling. I had seen enough horrors for one night, but a part of me, a deep-seated curiosity, yearned to know the truth. "I am," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. The figure nodded, a hint of approval in its posture. "Then follow me," it said. "The next trial awaits." It turned and walked towards the back of the mausoleum, its cloak billowing in the unseen breeze. I followed, the box clutched tightly in my hand. As we reached the far wall, a hidden door swung open, revealing a passage that descended into darkness. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever lay ahead. I stepped into the passage, the figure following close behind. The door slammed shut, plunging us into absolute darkness. The trial had begun. The passage was narrow and claustrophobic, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and mildew. I stumbled forward, my hands outstretched, feeling my way along the rough stone walls. The figure's footsteps echoed behind me, a constant reminder that I was not alone. The passage seemed to stretch on endlessly, twisting and turning like a labyrinthine nightmare. I lost all sense of time and direction, my mind reeling from the oppressive darkness. Suddenly, the passage opened into a vast, cavernous chamber. The air was still and heavy, the silence broken only by the soft drip of water from somewhere in the gloom. I squinted, trying to make out the shapes in the darkness. The figure stepped forward, its cloak billowing in an unseen breeze. It raised a skeletal hand, and the chamber was bathed in an eerie green light. The sight that greeted me sent a shiver down my spine. The walls were lined with cages, each containing a skeletal figure. Their empty eye sockets stared out at me, their bony fingers clutching at the bars. "The ancestors of Blackwood," the figure rasped. "Trapped here for eternity, their souls bound to this place by their sins." I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and the silence was punctuated by the soft rattling of bones. The figure turned to face me, its face still hidden in shadow. "They hunger for release," it said, "but only the true heir can set them free." I looked at the box in my hand, the heart pulsing within. I understood then what I had to do. I approached the nearest cage, its occupant a skeletal woman with long, flowing hair. I placed the box on the floor, its lid open. The heart glowed with a soft light, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The woman's skeletal hand reached out, her fingers brushing against the heart. A sigh like the rustling of dry leaves escaped her lips. Her bones began to knit together, flesh forming over her skeletal frame. Her eyes opened, revealing a pair of startlingly blue irises. She looked at me, a smile gracing her lips. "Thank you," she whispered. "You have set me free." She stepped out of the cage, her movements graceful and fluid. The other skeletons watched, their empty eye sockets filled with hope. I moved from cage to cage, repeating the process. With each release, the chamber grew brighter, the air less oppressive. The ancestors of Blackwood, once trapped in eternal torment, were now free to move on. As I opened the final cage, the figure stepped forward. "You have proven yourself worthy, heir of Blackwood," it said. "The final trial awaits." It gestured toward a doorway at the far end of the chamber. I hesitated, my heart heavy with anticipation. I had faced my fears, confronted the sins of my ancestors. Now the ultimate test awaited me. I took a deep breath and stepped towards the doorway. The figure's words echoed in my ears. "The inheritance is yours to claim, but beware, the darkness within Blackwood Manor runs deep." The Heir's Inheritance, Part 8. The doorway led to a grand hall, its walls adorned with tapestries depicting the Blackwood family's triumphs and tragedies. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, casting rainbows of color onto the polished marble floor. At the far end of the hall stood a throne, its back carved with the Blackwood crest. A figure sat upon it, shrouded in a shimmering white cloak. As I approached, the figure rose, its face revealed. It was a woman, her features radiant with an otherworldly beauty. Her eyes, the color of the clearest sky, held a wisdom that transcended time. "Welcome, Randall Everett," she said, her voice a melody of wind chimes. "I am the guardian of Blackwood Manor." I knelt before her, my heart overflowing with gratitude. "You have faced the trials," she continued, "and emerged victorious. You have confronted the darkness within yourself and within this house. You have proven yourself worthy of your inheritance." She gestured towards the throne. "Take your rightful place, heir of Blackwood. The manor is yours to command." I hesitated, my mind awash with conflicting emotions. The weight of responsibility pressed down on me, but so too did a sense of belonging, a connection to something greater than myself. I took a deep breath and ascended the steps to the throne. As I sat, a surge of power coursed through me, a warmth that spread from my heart to every corner of my being. The guardian smiled. "The curse is broken," she said. "Blackwood Manor is yours to shape, to mold into a place of light and hope. Use your inheritance wisely, Randall Everett. The future of Blackwood rests in your hands." With those words, she vanished, leaving me alone in the grand hall. I looked around, my eyes taking in the beauty and grandeur of my new home. The portraits on the walls seemed to smile down at me, their subjects no longer accusing but welcoming. I knew then that I was not alone. The ancestors of Blackwood, freed from their torment, were with me in spirit. They would guide me, support me, as I embarked on this new chapter of my life. I rose from the throne, a newfound confidence in my stride. I walked to the window, pushing open the drapes to let the sunlight flood in. The ravens circled overhead, their cries no longer ominous but celebratory. I was Randall Everett, heir of Blackwood Manor, and I was ready to face the future, with all its challenges and possibilities. The darkness had been vanquished, and a new dawn was breaking over Blackwood.